Guys, what's going on? It is Ash here coming at you today in Clash Royale. Today, I got my man Vulkan back on the line. Vulkan, what's up, man? How you doing?
Hey, how's it going? Just had breakfast, made this tier list, and I'm ready to go.
Yeah, dude, I have recruited you to do all my hard work for me, as usual here on the channel. Vulkan was kind enough to join me because I had this idea that I thought would be really, really cool, where we take the top 20 most popular decks inside the game right now, and I have a pro player come on, Vulkan, and I really wanted to make sure I reached out to a pro player who played every archetype, who plays everything, just like Vulkan does. And you're going to rank all of these decks in terms of the skill cap required to play them with success, right?
I would honestly say more the skill cap required to master them. Obviously,
Okay.
every deck is, takes skill, but some they just have a little bit more like nuance and intricacy than other decks.
Okay, I appreciate that clarification. So like some of these might be a little bit easier to pick up, but then like to master them, it might be way more difficult.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, safe to say. And if you have any decks like that, like if you feel like there's any decks that we reviewed today that are maybe all like pretty easy to pick up, and then like there's a real big hurdle to get next level, which I imagine was probably going to be the case with a lot of these decks, feel free to point that out. And I should give a big shout out to Vulkan's YouTube channel. Guys, you can check it out using the link in the description below. Vulkan's going to be uploading pretty much daily, right? Now that your CRL is concluded this season?
I think
No
so, or
pressure.
I might do bi-daily because
Oh,
I
yeah.
just finished setting up my setup, so I've already uploaded like twice in the last 2 days. I don't
Heck
know if
yeah.
I've been 2 days in a row now, but yeah, I'm going for consistency now.
Heck yeah, man. Well, good luck. Not that you need it. I'm sure you'll be very successful. And you also have a tier list video coming up as well, right?
Yes, I do. I'm gonna rank every card in the game.
Every card in the game, very ambitious, 96 cards. I can't wait to see that one, man. All right, cool. So, getting onto the list, what do you have first for us here?
So first I have Elixir Golem, and honestly, Elixir Golem is it takes a little bit of skill to play, but it's just that one deck where it's just so easy to pick up, and a lot of times they'll just take your tower first push if you make like one tiny error. So I just think that the margin of skill on this deck is just not really that high. And
Mhm.
for me, I've barely even practiced it. I've played like 30 games, maybe even 50 games with it, and I'm still beating pros with it in friendly battles like consistently. So it's just kind of a little bit ridiculous
Okay, so
how
it's
like
low
easy to
skill
play
cap.
it is. Oh
It's
yeah.
one of the lowest. If there one takeaway that you feel like, and I'll probably ask you this on almost every deck, is there one takeaway on this deck? Like if someone's picking it up for the first time, like what is the first thing they should be thinking about when entering a match with this deck?
Um, I would just say don't make the first play.
Mm-hmm.
And then
Perfect.
the second thing is just that there's some decks where you play Eagle in the back versus and some you don't. But that's really all you need to know to play the deck.
One example of where when you play Eagle in the back. What type of deck?
Versus Bomb Tower, I think you can
Okay.
always cycle it in the back safely.
Okay, sounds good. All right, next up.
Next up is going to be Lava Miner, and I think that I don't know, man. It's just so easy to play. Once you understand that, like anytime they play a 4 elixir troop in the back, you can just play Lava Hound same lane, and then you kind of just push same lane and Miner when your Lava Hound pops. It's just really simple to play once you get down the basic concept. So I have to put Lava Miner in at number 19.
Okay, so Lava Miner is another low skill cap deck. Any other like you kind of nailed it there, right? Is there any like kind of things that someone should be aware of again going into a game with Lava Miner? Like, what's the keys to have success with that deck?
Yeah, I would say, at least for me personally, I've been trying to practice it lately. I've just noticed that whenever they play a 4 elixir card, you can pretty much cycle Lava Hound same lane. It's really that simple. There's not really
Okay.
many exceptions.
Okay, sounds good. And what in terms of like your if they play a 4 elixir card in the back, you go same lane. Are you willing to use your miner and a spell like even in single elixir time with that deck, or is that something you want to save for like all three, your spell and your miner and your lava hound to like mainly double elixir?
I mean, yeah, if you get I would say if you get an even elixir trade, you can definitely use it.
Cool.
But you just wouldn't want to overcommit like on a negative elixir trade.
All right, what do you have next, man?
Next, I have Lava Loon. I actually think it takes a little bit more skill than Lava Miner because if you used to watch like Bokum play it, or if you watch Carl the Legend, I think he's
Yeah,
the main Lava Hound guy now.
yeah.
There's some really
All the
cool tricks
Germans,
you,
man. They love the
yeah,
lava. Yeah.
yeah. There's some cool tricks you can do with the balloon. You can like bypass a mortar by using minions, or bypass a building like skipping the balloon. You can start your Lava Hound in different positions, like versus Executioner. So I just think The technical placements on the lava loon makes it a little bit like harder to use, and not even harder to use, but I just you can outplay some more stuff using some weird tricks, and I just think that's kind of cool and takes a little bit more skill.
Okay, I buy that explanation. Let's move on. What do you have next?
Next, I have giant baits. Now, giant bait is the one category I kind of clumped up 3 decks in it because I wasn't really sure where else to put them. It
Hmm.
includes like giant Sparky, Goblin Giant Sparky, and giant Graveyard. And
Okay.
the thing about giant bait is that the best way to play the deck is to start out like Sparky first play if you have giant Sparky, or if you have giant Graveyard. I think you usually want to do like giant first play. I saw a lot of the top tier giant like Graveyard players doing that. And also, and then the Goblin Giant, you don't necessarily make the first play, but I don't really think it's that hard of a deck to play. It's really easy to pick up and learn. So I just don't think that it's the highest skill deck on this list, definitely.
Interesting.
I could almost say it goes lower, to be honest. Like
Wow.
it's
Yeah.
really easy to play.
Interesting that you say that. It surprises me that that's lower than like. I don't want to spoil the list at all, but it surprises me that you put that actually lower than like Golem. You know?
Yeah, I mean, I just think it's because it's more like if you know how to play the deck, if you know that playing Sparky is the first, like Sparky first play is actually a good thing to do. Because
Hmm.
then say they go Rider other lane, you play a Skarmy, they play a Golem other lane, you play Skarmy, you just get that like that infinite value off the Skarmy. It's just so easy to punish people in single elixir. I
Hmm.
just,
Cool.
I just think the play style of the deck itself is not that hard to do.
Okay, so giant bait. That's giant Sparky, Goblin Giant Sparky, and Graveyard Giant. Okay, what else you got for me?
So next up, I have Giant Miner. Now,
Okay.
one note about this is that there is a giant like Miner Magic Archer deck that I think is really like high skill in the meta right now. You saw Wings like finish top 10 global with it last season. I think he finished number 8, but I think traditionally, so I would actually put that higher on the list. But I think traditionally, Giant Miner is not really that hard to play because I remember I used to play it like back in the day, and I haven't used it recently because it just hasn't been that good. But you can basically just not make the first play and then just counter push off whatever they do and win games consistently that way. So it's just not. It takes a little bit of skill, you know. It's not like super easy to play, but
Mhm.
it's definitely not the highest or hardest thing to play in the meta for sure.
Yeah, and do you think that like with the giant minor triple spell decks, usually that's what they are with the triple spells. Do you is there like one fundamental that you kind of abide by when playing that deck as well? Like is there one like kind of golden rule to that deck?
Um, is there?
Well,
Honestly,
I'll
not
ask
really.
you.
You just don't really play giant in the back, but even then, you sometimes can. Like
But
you'll
what I
sometimes
was
see people doing it.
what I was gonna say too is that like you don't see some players. I feel like, and correct me if I'm wrong, but some players will play that deck, play the minor in single elixir time, just like it's a chip, like it's a minor chip or minor cycle. Whereas like when I've seen like final form and stuff play the deck, like he rarely does that. He's almost always just using the minor as like a sniper with the giant or in double elixir time to put like 2 tanks on the tower. Do you kind of agree with that, or do you use the minor as chip damage as well a lot with that deck?
Well, you know, that's kind of the thing though. Some players who are successful with it play it differently than other players who are
Hmm.
successful with it. So you can't really answer that. I would say
Okay.
the thing that even Boss Hay, like he's kind of inconsistent how he plays it. It kind of depends for him like on the meta.
Okay.
So
Cool.
I think
Well,
yeah.
that's a good answer then. Yeah. I always wondered like, okay, does the minor's role change in that deck? But anyway, what do you have next for us? And what number are we at right now?
That was number 16. So now
Okay.
we're at number 15. We're at Golem.
Ooh, there
And
he is. I was waiting for it. You
you
know.
know, so Golem right now is in a weird spot. I saw some people talking about it on Twitter because you actually see a lot of people, like the people who have been getting number one in the world with Golem recently, they've been playing Golem first play. But that's just kind of because the Golem decks they've been pushing too high with, I think Geenlo Asian or something like that. Like that dude plays
Yeah.
Golem first play. The Golem Bomber guys play Golem first play. That's just because that deck is made to play Golem first play. But traditionally, you wouldn't really play Golem first play. Like when you saw Royal play it, he would never make the first move, and he would finish like I think he finished number 2 or number 3 in the world with it like multiple times.
Yeah.
So This version of Golem that you see that's meta right now is not that high skill, but I think traditionally Golem is a lot higher skill than people have been playing it recently.
Wow, that's very interesting. So you think that there's kind of a misnomer that Golem is just like the absolute lowest skill deck. And again, guys, we're looking at this from a pro perspective here. So, you know, you're judging this on maybe a different scale than maybe a lot of like just random casual players or sucky players like me, right? Where I look at Golem, I'm like, that seems easy for me to play. So that's low skill, right? But I think that you're speaking a lot too about like to become an elite Golem player, so to speak. It's not as easy as people think. Is that correct?
Yeah,
Or
that is definitely true. Like you can even push ladder with Golem, and you can play Golem first play and say you just win more than you lose, so you're gaining trophies. But if you want to finish like #1 in the world with Golem or something like that, you can't be playing it like an idiot. You have to play it really smart.
got you. Okay, sounds good. What do you have next for us?
Next, I have Royal Giant.
Okay.
And Royal Giant, I guess I'm saying the Royal Giant Furnace version here.
Mm-hmm.
There's also the Royal Giant NATO version that's been meta. And honestly, Royal Giant is, I think there's no question that it's a high skill deck. We're kind of getting into like the decks that really take a lot of skill now.
Okay. Okay. So after the Golem, there's kind of a break, and now we're getting into like mid to high level skills.
I think so. Or Golem
Cool.
might even be at that break. Like Golem is
Okay.
not necessarily that easy to use.
Okay.
But
Especially in this meta. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. Okay, so Royal Giant, yeah, I'm surprised at what you just said, that you consider Royal Giant to actually be, you know, borderline high skill. But I will back you up, because in some of these decks, especially that Royal Giant cycle deck, dude, man, I played that before I recorded it. I'm not, you know the one I'm talking about, right? Like with
Oh,
this, yeah. Like that is a tough deck to have success. I can't believe people like finished top 100 with that deck, because to me it's like insanely difficult to play. But why do you think Royal Giant is, again, kind of correct our misnomers? Why is that? Why are those Royal Giant decks, you know, higher skill than we think?
I think they are just because there's sometimes like you can get if you play Royal Giant versus some decks in single elixir, you will just lose the game instantly. And there's some decks where you have to play Royal Giant in single elixir,
Mm.
or they're just going to out chip you. So you really have to know your matchups, and you have to know exactly what to do versus matchups. And I like you honestly could argue that it's a higher skill deck than I'm even putting it on this list. But
Okay,
uh,
fair enough,
that's my
man.
reason.
Fair enough, and I like that. We're gonna have to bring you back on the channel sometime and talk about when to play Royal Giant single elixir versus double elixir, because I'm actually curious about that. But for brevity's sake, let's move on to the next one on the list here.
Okay, so next on the list, I actually kind of changed this on the fly, not even really intentionally, but we have Pekka Ram Rider, and I'm not saying Pekka Battle Ram, I'm saying Pekka Ram Rider,
Okay.
because with Pekka Ram Rider, I think that especially once you've learned Pekka Battle Ram, it's really easy to play. But the difference is with Pekka Ram Rider, what you're doing is you're going same lane as your opponent, and you're playing Ram Rider same lane as the Pekka. Whereas with Pekka Battle Ram, you're attacking in two lanes.
Hmm.
So
Okay.
Pekka Ram Rider is kind of more of a beatdown deck, and I know you probably don't even like me saying this because it's like your favorite deck, but it's more of a beatdown deck
No,
than
well,
Pekka
listen.
Battle Ram.
There's a reason why I find personally to have more success with the Ram Rider version, because I'm not a skilled player, so of course it's lower skill. It makes sense to me. But yeah, man, that's a very interesting point about like pushing. And I find that like just it's so much easier just personally to play Ram Rider over Battle Ram, just because of the defensive utility you get out of it. You know, like if you're caught in a bad cycle with Ram Rider, oftentimes Ram Rider will save you. You know.
Yeah, exactly. And honestly, I noticed that like recently also because I played the Pekka Battle Ram version, and I'm like, dang, this sometimes you just can't beat like balloon decks, for example, because you don't have that
Yeah.
defensive minions, or you don't have that defensive Ram Rider. So you really have to be with like Battle Ram, you have to be a lot more thoughtful about what cards you cycle. Where as with Pekka Ram Rider, I honestly don't even make the first play really. I just wait for their play. Unless I have Bandit or Barbaro in starting hand, I wait for their play and I just counter push off of them.
Cool. Cool. All right, let's move on to number 11. I think
This is
12.
number 12.
Okay, 12.
Okay, so Three Musketeers. Now, I
Hmm.
actually
Okay.
think that Three Musketeers used to be higher skill than they are now. But I
Hmm.
think just because of the deploy time nerf and like changing the elixir pump, you can't really play Three Musketeers high anymore. It's not really that good of a play because somebody can just fireball them right away. So you always have to play them in the back. But I think that there still is a lot of skill in the deck. I think it's still, and it's just not good in the meta.
Mhm.
But especially if they buff it, you could see it being good again. But yeah, that's kind
Yeah.
of my thought process on
No,
that.
I agree with you, and I think that like the giant three musketeers, like who am I? But I feel like that might be a little bit lower skill, and then like the traditional minor three musketeers, I think that might be a little bit higher. But either way, I feel like three muskies is definitely higher skill than a lot of people thought. For a while there, I think people are now starting to realize because I look back at like some guys who were like dominant with 3M, and it's just those guys were just next level. I feel like.
I definitely agree with everything you
Yeah.
just said.
Cool. All right. Well, let's move on. Then we agree on three muskies. What do you have next for us?
Next, I have royal hogs, and I'm putting these there here because they're definitely more viable in 3M, but they're not as high on the skill like list. I think they're it's kind of like if you understand how to play all the decks that are higher skill than royal hogs are super easy to pick up. Like I would play them CRO and I wouldn't even practice them just because I understand how to split lane pressure and things like that. And they're not in this meta, they're not good just because of all the bomb tower. But in the future metas, when bomb tower isn't so like popular,
Hmm.
you'll see Royal Hogs come back into the meta. And I think just because of the split lane pressure on its own, and also it's really easy or not really easy. It's a high skill deck. I learned it from like Air Surfer and XOP XTM, so it's actually kind of hard for me to even say like how hard it is to master because I just watched their games and I just copied what they did and learned it super easily. But I think for most people, it's not necessarily that easy to master. So that's kind of it's why it goes kind of in the middle of my list.
Okay, makes sense. I agree with there. Let's move on to the top 10. I think.
Yes, this
All
is
right,
number 10.
here we
Number
go.
10 is Splash Yard.
Okay.
And man, this is the deck I used to one trick on ladder. Well, I used to one trick two decks on ladder. I used to play Mortar and Splash Yard because they're the decks you can play and your level doesn't really matter.
That's
Um,
true. Yeah.
but with so I almost want to rank it higher,
I
but
was just gonna say I'm surprised it's kind of this low, even though it's pretty high given the
I,
overall
I'm
list. But yeah.
I'm not going to though because I think so. I used to play it on ladder like when it wasn't really that good on ladder. So right now I think it's actually in like one of the best spots it's ever been. But like in the past, if and even now, if you're playing like a Pekka player, they even if you play Splash Yard perfectly, they can kind of just like in single elixir they can Pekka in the back, and they can just outplay you, and there's not really anything you can do about it. So I think it's really good in the comp meta when people aren't one tricking like Pekka decks and they don't know how to play Pekka perfectly. You can kind of just outplay any matchup. But when you're getting to the really high like tier ladder players and just high tier competitive players, I think they can out like a really good Pekka player can outplay a really good graveyard player.
Okay, interesting. So it ends up being kind of a game of matchups, but like the deck in terms of its sheer skill itself required, uh, you'd put it like kind of middle of the pack.
I would because you're kind of just counter pushing with it.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
you have to know, where to place your buildings and where to place your tornado. But um, I mean,
Cool.
you can make the first play, but it's kind of a counter push deck, and there's not.
So as long as you're super passive and always reminding yourself, be patient, be patient, be patient, you'll be pretty good.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. All right, next up, and we're moving into the top 10 now.
Yeah. Well, no, we're moving to the top 9 now.
One of these days, I'll keep track of the number. Vulcan. All right, so number 9 is.
Number 9 is Icepo, and
Ooh,
this is a tough
Carnage.
one
Not going
because
to be happy with that ranking.
no, I wasn't sure if I should be talking about Tesla Icepo here, or if I should be talking about Ice Golem with like Mega Minion Icepo.
I think
So
ISPO in general is pretty
yeah,
good. Yeah,
I just I just talk about both of them honestly.
yeah. So
And
so how do you feel about ISPO? Why is it lower than 2.9?
so it's lower than 2.9 because I feel like most people don't know how to play it. But if you know how to play it, I don't think it's that hard to play.
Okay.
I
Okay.
think that the biggest thing you see is like, especially when I used to watch Carnage play, my biggest takeaway was that a lot of times he would be really aggressively cycling like Ice Wizard, and then as soon as they play a card, he would instantly Expo. So he's going for an Expo punish in single elixir, and then in double elixir, he really gets into playing defensive Expos a lot. And because of that, I think it's just most people don't know that you're supposed to punish in single elixir, and then double elixir, you just play a lot of defense and like
Hmm.
log cycle and then rocket cycle. So I don't think it's necessarily that hard to do, but and then also the other thing about ISPO is that in order to be successful with it, like on ladder, you have to know exactly what deck your opponent is playing. And I think if you're looking from a normal standpoint or from a competitive standpoint, that's kind of a fluke because you wouldn't really know what deck you're facing.
Okay.
So that's kind of why I put it lower. Whereas like with 2.9, you don't have to know the deck you're playing. You just play it the same way versus any deck, and
Got you.
but you still have to cycle your cards like in the correct way. And I think there's just a lot more things you can do with it.
Okay, so it sounds like the big takeaway on ISPO is that if you're playing it right, it's easier to master than one might think, but no one or seldom do people really play it correctly, meaning that Expo, aggressive single elixir, and then just chill, double elixir.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. Number 8?
Number eight's gonna be Pekka Battle Ram.
Pekka Battle Ram. Okay, wow. I'm shocked. I mean, I'm actually not shocked at all because at how high you rank it, because I know that from when you came on with a Pekka deck like 6 months ago. I remember you were like, yeah, Pekka's actually really higher skill cap than people think.
Yeah, and I mean, I've talked to like Vulkan about this, and it's not. I would say we're getting into the point now, especially with ISPO, where these are like the really high skill cap decks. Like,
Okay.
sorry, an alarm go off there.
No worries.
And I think Pekka Battle Ram, because you really have to count your elixir with this deck. You have to know exactly what their cycle is, so you can know exactly when to punish them. You have to know when to Pekka in the back. You have to know when to Battle Ram at low elixir. You have to play. There's like tricks where you can like play your Royal Ghost in front of your Battle Ram instead of playing it behind your Battle Ram that like not a lot of people know. So there's just a lot of nuances with this deck, and I find it really fun to play just because of all that. Like personally, I love playing the high skill cap decks because there's just so many things you can do with them.
Yeah.
And just so many ways you can outplay people. And yeah, there's just a lot to think about when you're playing Pekka Battle Ram.
Do you think that in a vacuum, like in any given average meta, do you think that skill aside, is Battle Ram split lane like Battle Ram Pekka better, or is Ram Rider like same lane beatdown better? Like if you could only play one of those two decks for forever, which would you gamble on?
I would gamble on Pekka Battle Ram, definitely. I mean, you see Carpy playing it on ladder. That's the version he uses. He always finishes higher than like, who's the other one? Ivan? I think Ivan plays a lot of Pekka Ram Rider. I'm not sure if I'm assuming the right guy.
Yeah.
But you're seeing Carpy always finishes higher.
It used to be Mikkel and Carpy like being like the two Pekka guys, but then there's been a few other names too recently. But yeah, I think that you're right. It does. Battle Ram does seem to, and on the leaderboard, seem to kind of always win out in terms of more people playing it higher at the end of the season.
Yeah, but I think for the average player, Pekka Ram Rider is really not that much worse, and it's definitely a lot easier to pick up and a lot easier to play. And it's only like a tiny bit worse. It really is, but it's just like at that super elite level, you gotta pick the Pekka Battle Ram.
Sure. Okay, next up.
Next up is gonna be a Ram Rider Cycle, and this is I'm talking about the version that like Wero uses. I don't know.
Okay.
He's finished like top 10 like consistently the last couple seasons with it. He might have even finished like consistently for the last year. I'm not sure how long he's been playing the deck, but I almost even have trouble playing this on a higher list than Battle Ram because I'm not really sure when Wero plays if he like is sniping people or something, but he's always consistently finishing higher than Carpy, which kind of generally the higher skill decks finishes higher in ladder. That's just kind of how it works. Not for every deck, but like for everything but 2.6 and log bait, I would say.
Okay, so I think that deck pretty much speaks for itself. But like, if people want to try it out at home, what would you recommend? Like, how are you playing the Ram Rider differently than you would in, say, a Pekka Ram Rider deck? I guess in a lot of ways, right?
I would say that you're making sure you're not playing your Ram Rider first. You're making sure you get down like an Ice Golem and a Lumberjack usually, and you're using Ram Rider with a Lumberjack Rage effect. So a lot of games you can play most of the game without even playing Ram Rider, unless the Ram Rider's like on defense or something.
Yeah. Okay,
but you're mostly just playing with like the Lumberjack a lot.
All right, moving on to number 6.
Number 6 is going to be Log Bait, and this one's hard because like Log Bait just really isn't good, but I think that speaks to the skill of some of the log bait players. The two big ones are Kid and Face Control.
Yes, yeah. Two different decks too.
Yeah, if you watch those guys play, like they just know the deck perfectly. It's really hard to emulate them. Like I've tried to use the decks and I've just been like, yeah, I could learn this, but it would just take forever and not really be worth it because it's not even good. But but those guys like you can Princess at the Bridge and then like prediction log, or you can I see Face Control, he'll like Princess at the Bridge and then he'll prediction minion horde and like do crazy stuff like that. He'll like
Yeah.
throw really weird like barrels, and I think that yeah, it's not that good of a deck, but especially if they buff it, you would see it a lot, and it's not easy to play.
It's weird because I would actually like to see it buffed because I love to watch players play Lockbait. I love watching it, right? But at the same time, it is still, I think, the top 5 most popular deck on ladder in the aggregate in every arena. So like obviously people still play it a lot, right? Even though it's not in the best spot. So I'm afraid those use rates would just like skyrocket, if they gave it like a substantial buff to like the Goblin Barrel directly. So maybe just like another in some of the complementary cards. But either way, going back to the skill required, I've always been I've always been saying that Log Bait is actually a pretty high skill cap deck. So yeah, it's just because of all the different nuances, basically. And
I think it's because of the prediction plays is what it really
okay,
is.
okay, cool. Yeah, and there's so many like so much prediction potential in this deck, and yeah, I totally agree with you. So let's move on to the top 5.
Top five. So I'm putting 2.6 at number 5.
Okay.
And
Some people put that at number 1, Vulcan. Some people put
yeah,
it last too.
I have reasoning. I have
Okay.
reasoning. So 2.6 I think is a more simple a more simple deck than the decks that are higher than it.
Okay.
And what I mean by that is there's only one win condition. There's only I guess 4 cards you really need to think about in the deck. You really think about Ice Skull, Lock Cannon, Hog, and Musketeer. Those are the cards you're worried about cycling too quickly and stuff like that.
Hmm.
Um, and I think people think that it's higher skill because it's not as good as the decks above it. So
Okay.
it
So you
seems
have
like
to have higher
it's harder to
skill.
get
Yeah.
high. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
if you look at like Jack, he's not even playing 2.6. He's pushing higher with like minor balloon and like minor wall breakers than he ever did with well not ever did. But
Mm-hmm.
in this meta than he ever would with 2.6 just because they're better decks. But I think that they still have more to think about.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, there's only a small handful of players you ever see crack top 50, top 100 with 2.6. Now 2.6 in general, I actually kind of agree with you. Like the 4 key cards or whatever, the 5 key cards, they're all like incredibly narrow definition of how you're mostly using them in the deck, right? So it's like it's rather basic and compared to a deck where there's just you have to use these cards in the right situation. It seems like there's a very clear role situationally for almost every card in 2.6. Do you agree with that?
I agree with that, yes.
Cool. All right. Well, 2.6 does crack the top 5, but at number 5, what's 4?
Number 4 is going to be Balloon Cycle. So this balloon cycle I'm talking about is like the balloon bomb tower deck, or
Mm-hmm.
like Mugi used to play the balloon inferno tower deck. And I think especially if you used to watch Mugi play that balloon inferno tower deck, you saw he just made some crazy outplays. In single elixir, a lot of times he would only minor chip, whereas you see a lot of people going like, they're punishing with like Ice Golem Balloon versus
Yeah.
Golem. Even they would punish with Ice Golem Balloon, whereas Mugi sometimes would only minor and then just play defense. And he would just do some weird things you would never really expect anyone to do. But he would like finish consistently top 5 on ladder with it. So it's just crazy watching like all the things you can do with the minor and the balloon. One really neat trick I learned is versus tornado decks. He would go balloon to tank for his minor because then they would activate King Tower off the balloon and the miner would get a bunch of chip damage. So
Hmm. Yeah.
there's just some crazy outplays you can do with Balloon Cycle that I think are really cool and puts it up here at the top of the list.
Yeah, no doubt. And all these decks, for the most part, are cycle decks here at the top of the of your ranking. And I think it's no surprise because I think that given these fast cycle decks, you just have to make so many kind of crucial decisions. And oftentimes they don't even feel like crucial decisions. I feel like it's oftentimes more difficult to go back and look at, okay, what mistakes did I make in this match when you're playing one of these high skill cap decks, because you had to make so many decisions that oftentimes maybe it wasn't the obvious mistake that lost you the match. Maybe it was a play 2 or 3 plays before when you cycled the card you shouldn't have, or you went too aggressive. But it's hard to kind of notice these things. Do you agree with that kind of sentiment?
Yes, I agree.
Okay, well let's keep it going here. Top 3. What do we have at number 3?
Top three. So I have minor wall breakers, which man, it's close to the same as balloon cycle. But
Mm.
I think one thing about minor wall breakers that makes it a little bit different is that you have to count elixir more. So you have to know when at 5 elixir, you have an advantage and you just go minor wall breakers at the bridge. Or sometimes I see people going like Valkyrie bats at the bridge at 6 elixir because they know that their opponent can't do anything and can't defend it, and they'll just like take their tower that way. So I think the new minor wall breakers deck, and also for me, it was kind of hard to learn how to play it. Like originally when it came out, I didn't really know how to play it, and then I watched some of the other pros play it, and I was like, oh, so that's how you play that matchup. Oh, that's how you beat Golem. And I think it's just like, um,
Just out of curiosity, how do you beat Golem with it?
so
Because that's kind of a
you
matchup I've
gotta
actually
you gotta
struggled with.
watch you gotta
Yeah.
watch my last video,
Okay,
man.
okay, okay.
It's
I'll link
it's
it for
in
my
there. I
viewers.
talk about it.
Nice
Yeah.
plug, nice plug. But now give me the low level quickly. What am I hitting opposite lane when they drop Golem, or am I just cycling bomb towers? What am I doing?
So you're hitting opposite lane with like you're not playing your Valkyrie opposite lane really unless you know their cycle. What you're doing is doing like minor wall breakers or
Okay.
minor skeletons or minor bats, and then the important thing is that you're not really using your Valkyrie on defense a lot. You're trying to pull everything to the bomb tower bomb, and then
Okay. All right.
there's a
Cool.
couple more
Yeah, and
nuances.
then watch
It's really weird.
Vulcan's video for the rest. I got you. I got you. All right. Moving into the top two.
Okay, in the top two is gonna be mortar bait,
Mortar
mortar
bait. Yeah.
miner.
No
And the reason,
surprise. Yeah.
yeah, the reason this is up there is because this is another deck where you have to count elixir. You can attack on 5 elixir because you know their cycle with like minor bats. You can mortar at low elixir because you know their cycle. You can miner, like there's just all sorts of things you can do with this.
Mm.
Sometimes you want to mortar on offense. Sometimes you only want to save it for defense. There's just a lot of things to know with mortar.
Yeah, and you're a mortar player yourself. You, like you said, when you two tricked, I guess. You
Yeah.
you ran mortar as well. So in splash yard. So with mortar, like, what is one lesson that you learned, whether it be like a small nuance or like a big like macro theme for the deck? What is something that you kind of learned along the way that made you a better mortar player?
I would say, man, there's a lot. I mean, counting elixir is the most important thing, counting cycle. But the two things I learned are that miner and mortar first play are the best starting plays. And you don't play miner bats, you don't play miner goblin king. You only play miner and you only play mortar. And mortar's the best starting play. Miner's the second best.
Okay, not together though, correct?
Not together, no.
Sounds good. So either mortar and miner. So starting out with a win condition every single time is your big, tip for that deck, and that only leaves one deck for the number one spot, Vulcan. And I feel like I should preface this by saying that this is probably one of the most controversial decks out there too. But yeah, let's go into it. Number one.
So I have Expo 2.9 as number
Yeah.
one.
And it didn't surprise me at all. I've always said that I think that's the highest skill cap deck in the game, along with 2.6, so we're a little off on there. But tell us why. Tell Molt why 2.9 is the highest skill cap deck, and I love you, Molt, man. Go
You
on.
know, the reason why you have to like watch people like Dink Gannon and Lemon Tea and Air Surfer play, and then you have to try to do what they do and realize you can't do it. Because Expo is, well, maybe you could, but Expo is the one deck in the meta where you have to practice it and learn matchups every single meta. It's not the you
You have
can't
to
play it the
relearn
same.
everything. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like I used to, and also I can go to a grand challenge and I can win 12-0 like consistently. Like I won't drop a game, and then I can go to top 200 ladder and I'll lose every single game. Like it's crazy how like a good how perfectly you have to play versus a good player. Whereas it's not necessarily that hard to pick up. You can play it on ladder if you're just average, and you can win some games. You can push decently high. But when you're taking it to the next level, you have to know when to cycle your Tesla over your archers. You have to know when to pre-place Tesla, when you don't pre-place Tesla, when to defensive expo. There's just so many different combinations you can do with the deck, and it's just kind of crazy. And then also, yeah, relearning to every meta. Like in this meta, one thing I see Lemon Tree do that's different from other metas is that he's pre-Teslaing like all the time. Like anytime they play a card, he just plays Tesla. Whereas when you used to see Air Surfer play it, he would never pre-Tesla and he would still do well. And I think a lot of the reason that pre-Tesla is so good right now is because Eagle's meta. So you kind of have to do it, otherwise all the Elixir Golem players are just gonna beat you. So
Mhm.
just like things like that, you have to learn like whenever there's a new broken card, you have to play it differently. I
I
think
agree
that's
with
just
you
like
though.
super key.
I mean, it's no secret that I agree with you, and I think back to like some of the Crafter and Dan Gannon videos, and Lemmetry too. Is like, dude, sometimes those matches like are some of the most memorable on my entire YouTube channel to me. Like how intense they are. Like seriously, I feel that no archetype again maybe like 2.6 on like a god tier player, but like you see skill, like you can just watch these matches. I'll link a couple expo videos I'm talking about for you guys if you're curious in the description, and I'll link a couple of my favorite 2.6 videos just for the heck of it. But when you watch some of these matches, you're like, oh, what am I even witnessing right now? You know, like it's that level of sheer, like decision after decision after decision after skillful plays, just all over every single match. So I totally agree with you there. So what do you say to the people who think that Expo is like the easiest archetype in the world? I mean, you said a lot of it there, but like, what is your rebuttal? Do you find Expo to be aggravating?
Do I find it? I don't think so because sometimes I find ISPO to be aggravating, honestly. But
Okay.
2.9, I feel like I can usually outplay the 2.9 player. Like it's not if you play perfect, I don't think Expo is going to beat you usually. Usually it's
Okay.
only when you make a mistake that Expo beats you. And it's really easy to make a mistake. Even the best players make mistakes. So you see Expo still winning. But I think in a perfect world, Expo is not going to win if you're playing the game perfectly.
All right, man. Well said. And thank you again for coming on the channel, Vulkan. Really appreciate you adding all this insight into all these decks. Guys, if you liked this video idea, let me know. I've never done this before, so I would love your feedback. It's kind of a long video, but I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Vulkan, where can people find you, man?
So you can find me on Twitter at, well, just look up Vulcan on the first name that pops up.
Yeah.
And you can find me on YouTube at Vulcan Gaming.
All right, sounds good. We'll be looking forward to your tier list. If that's out at the same time this video is, I'll link that as well in the description below. Thanks again, Vulcan. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. It was fun.
No problem, guys. It was a lot of fun. So, guys, thank you so much for watching all the way till the end. Thank you guys for using my creator code CWA. Huge shout out to Clash Royale and Bren Chong, my YouTube partners. Check out their information as well. Thank you. And as always, take care, guys.